will say that Wulong is nuts. I am Couch Cute, by the way. This is my top Souls-likes on the planet Earth. Maybe another parallel universe that plays Souls-likes that has better ones, but we do not know about them at this stage. We're going to start with Wulong. I know I'm slating it a little bit. The game goes at 300 miles an hour. It is so difficult to get back into. Only 2 of the 10 games on this list I had to reinstall. The other 8 are just in my calendar on my rotation permanently. Wulong was one of the reinstallations, and sliding back into that 2-stage block and parry system was a bit of a nightmare. But when I first played it, went onto Game Pass day one, it was quite refreshing. KT are awesome, but this is not the only KT game on the list. Slight spoiler. There is just constantly so much going on, and the game pushes non-player characters to you like on a compulsory level, so you're always dealing with someone else on the battlefield. It does want to be a sort of semi-online all the time game with having your friends on the team when you do missions. As a solo experience it's okay, but a lot of these additions were looked at when it came to Rise of Ronin. Funnily enough, they cherry-picked some of the cool stuff from this game, and you've got to admit some of these monsters, creatures and boss fights are absolutely off the wall. But for me it feels a bit overcooked, with so many options on the R buttons for magic and buffs for your teammates, then healing them, they're down, you've got to worry about them. It's also not very well optimized for the PC currently and does need some work still, but it's pretty damn cool on the top end consoles. And if you're remotely interested in Team Ninja and KT games, this is not a bad Souls-like. So Lords of the Fallen stumbles in at number 9. This is one of the newest games on the list, features quite a lot of tech, and again we don't have the best optimization, particularly not on my level of PC, but it's kind of okay on consoles and had a rocky launch on performance. It is quite a bold move to have such a tech heavy Souls-like in such a competitive market, but it's kind of still around and still pulling through. I do enjoy it. It comes with a lamp mechanic which lets you see the world from a whole new set of eyes, almost like the Hallowed idea, but loads more in depth. They put it into puzzles and you can play the entire game within this second universe almost. It's also the game I've played the least on the entire list, and you might think that could be affecting my judgment on where it sits with all of the modern Souls-likes out there at the moment. I want some comments on this. I think I may have pitched this just right. It is nearly an awesome Souls-like, but it just misses out on performance issues, being slightly overcomplicated with some of those lamp physics and puzzles, and really not doing anything massively out of that Souls-like sphere to make you notice it. I do really like its look. I love that other world. It's almost Stranger Things the Upside Down, like Geiger-esque sections to all of the walls, and it's almost organic. There's all kinds of crazy lore and stories to be had of some of the lost souls that are in between these two existences. So it's not simple stuff. The combat, however, does feel, against what we've got coming up, slightly linear also, but I'm pretty sure that expands with further playing. Sometimes you'll catch the game looking absolutely incredible. And we are still in mid-level PC country. This game is on Unreal 5 and sort of advertises itself as a true 9th gen Souls-like game. And in sections, it certainly does feel like that. It does handle crowds very well. I remember when the Elden Ring first came out and that initial village that you got to, more than 4 people would come towards you and the whole thing would nearly fall over. That was on a PlayStation 5. So this is doing considerably well, taking its age into account. I'm being nice. That does remind me, I do need to be clear about the rules of this list. There will be no From Software games on here bar one. Why have I done that? Because I want to give Souls-like as much sunlight as possible out of the actual From Software games. One From Software non-Dark Souls game gets into this list. I actually physically couldn't help it. I do want to stipulate that both Wulong and Lords of the Fallen are currently both available on Game Pass, PC and console. So there's your way in. No guilt on the money spent. You get to have a look at them on a subscription service. I suppose it's time for this chunky monkey, Mortal Shell, a game I've got a lot of time for. Gave us a PS5 free upgrade and runs stellar on that system. Looks incredible, only 1080, but we've got a nice PEG 60. If Mortal Shell was a vehicle, it would be a goddamned 18-wheeler. This game does not muck about. It was the other reinstallation, and it also still haunts my nightmares. Mortal Shell's gimmick is a really cool one. You get flung out of your shell quite literally, and you have to run around and get back in it in order to carry the game on. It's almost got a 4-class locked system where you have to discover the full armor sets. The weapons are also pretty scarce. They vastly change things up when discovered. The game isn't huge and it doesn't retail at a lot of money. It's only about 30 gigabyte. You've got 15 to 20 hours maximum if you really want to just platinum the whole thing. But it's one of these Souls-likes that doesn't, take the earth to finish, and you will get to see endgame and, more importantly, those awesome shell differentials. You heard me talking about Chunky Monkey at the beginning. It's because it's really confident with its weight. It's the chunkiest of sword swings, physics of the armor swinging left and right. You do really feel empowered when you're using all of the weaponry in the game. It also doesn't have an allocated, technically, guard button. You turn to stone on L2 if you have enough energy to do so. You also have a snap parry, which is very difficult to get your head around if you've been playing Wulong or Lords of the Fallen for ages. It is also, as you may be able to see, quite difficult. I know that's a Souls trait and should be there, but with this, it's a real rhythm. You really have to learn the game's pace and sort of let it talk to you, work out its message with a lot of the boss fights. But the rewards, few and far between that they are totally amazing. They're game changing. They're like the 4 corners of the game's entire idea. It totally works, and that length sort of matches that. I'm really keen to see more. There is a smaller bit of DLC. Hopefully this gets sequeled, fingers crossed. I cannot believe it's time for Jedi Survivor already. We're at number 6. I did love Fallen Order, both of which have been reviewed standalone and put into a Star Wars list. But to get it right twice, to get that Souls-like / Star Wars IP correct in 2 video games like that is kind of a cool thing.
Help me!
You might be aware of my previous content. I am not a die-hard Star Wars fan, But playing this, enjoying all the characters, I don't mind Cal, and I do love how they keep pushing mini bosses, really cool looking planets, but obeying that amazing discovery and risk reward that comes with a Souls-like model, getting to the meditation points and dealing with quite difficult bosses. This game pushes back perfectly. It is aimed at a larger audience because it's under that Star Wars umbrella, but as a Souls fan, I still get an itch scratched. Absolutely amazing stuff. We are back on PC and we are looking at some technically horrendous performance in areas. Again, this needs to be optimized, and we have seen some improvements over the last couple of months. Also, against games like Wulong with forced NPC involvement, this kind of scores really well with having a few missions with companions, but they're really cool to hang out with, and they've got amazing powers that you can slap on without any huge complication. Nice, simple UI and pretty easy and large counter windows for parry. Fallen Order surprised me, like really surprised me, but this blew me away. I couldn't get over how much improvement had been injected and how natural all the lightsaber combat feels with that focus button and using amazing force push powers, bringing people towards you. You've got the get over here move from Mortal Kombat quite literally, so I was extremely pleased to see this both perform well and get quite a lot of Game of the Year nods. For a Souls-like, that's not bad going. Also done the cool thing of holding back on range. Fallen Order didn't technically have it. You could throw your swords around, but you didn't have a hand solo light pistol per se. It's so awesome having it injected into your moveset. It's optional and it feels like a third arm. It's so cool in combat, snapping to it, totally different angle offered to me, and I am at amateur stage with it.
Where are you going?
I'll never give in. I won't yield.
This is by far the game that offers the most outlandish adventure. This feels like a Star Wars game that just happens to have Souls-like elements. It's very cool how everything is blended in equally. Going into this room, clearing this room out. Yeah, awesome stuff.
My trunk will be you.
Lovely. Target is vulnerable. Barely felt it.
There should be no soul snobbery when looking at Respawn's amazing Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games. They are totally worth having in your collection if you're a Souls-like lover. The boss entrances and some of the one-to-one fights are pretty unrivaled within the Star Wars video game canon.
Lost functionality. Eliminated.
I suppose it's time to talk about Stellar Blade. Now this one's going to put some leotards in a twist. It is technically a Souls-like for me. There's the stipulation. I feel that it touches on a few of the keystones more than it doesn't. Probably has got more in common with Nier Automata, and that's not a reference to the cosplay. The structure on the game changes a bit, but it does have that solid restart system and upgrading the hubs, but it's very focused on building relationships with NPCs, and it's also got a big hotkey moveset over there on the right hand side, which is all about delivering punishment, but it is still parry heavy, so the game swings in and out of the Souls criteria quite a lot, but I think overall we can all agree that it's at least 60% Souls. I'm going to go with that. feel I may be safe in saying that this game is by far the flashiest on the list and rivals Lords of the Fallen for being slightly newer. I do love the angle that the studio have taken, both with the genre and the risks with the female protagonist. I will link my standalone review of this game because it caused a goddamn bombshell when it came out on initial release. Things have calmed down now, thank God. But it's that enemy design. It's almost like macabre discovery, coming across new biomes and dealing with the creatures that exist within them. And they've all got quite a lot of complication attached to their energy breakdowns and their stamina meters and when they're going to break, and you're going to be able to get a backstab equivalent in. Great arcade-like, fast-feeling combat coupled with some really awesome Souls-like elements.
Geppetto's puppet. We need your help.
Coming in at number 5, it is The Lies of P, and I think this one's going to cause some controversy as well in the comments. I think a lot of you may want to see this a little higher, but you've just got to wait to see what we've got coming up. To have this rival the games we've had before and are coming is pretty amazing. It's barely been out over a year. The Lies of P smashed it on release, is smashing it now, and will probably keep going. It's kind of an industry leader because of how young it is and how refreshing it was, even though it sticks to just about every Souls-like trait in the business. Also a debut title from the studio, South Korean, and it just feels like a really experienced, high-budget team behind this who have got massives of experience in the genre already. It feels like it's made from some people from FromSoft, I think is what I'm trying to say. It does have a pretty cool stagger mechanic on the enemy, giving you a nice clear white box around the health. Give it a build move and they are ready for a backstab, front stab equivalent. There are different aspects of the Souls-like series built upon within Lies of P so incredibly that it's like the limousine or the Rolls Royce of Souls-like. Again, it should be a lot higher on the list. It may be if I revisit this in 5 years like I did with the last list. I think one of the important things about a Souls-like, or putting one together, is the world building, the lore and the ideas and the characters. Also having a really cool central hub and building up upon that, but also having different fragmented teams of people out there within map who are on your side or maybe end up not being. That's definitely a cool area. The obligatory opening of the doors to a new area, which is something I wanted to put at the start of all of these games but couldn't find it in every single one, but I'm pretty sure they've kind of all got it, even Stellar Blade maybe. But just back to the world building topic, I haven't seen a more interesting lore, rules or backstory in a video game since Bioshock with the Lies of P coolness. It's just amazing. That puppet master fight, the intro, the tale of it all going wrong for this ideal community. It's epic. It is a slightly darker, more cerebral retelling of the Pinocchio story. Some of the characters even make a named reappearance, but I just love the take on it all. How they have innovated with the loads of these boss fights. They are incredible. They're up there with Elden Ring, to be fair, with just sheer terrifying moves and different stages of metamorphosis. You are totally kept on your toes with what you've got coming around the corner. Also has a lot more than initially imagined, with weapon variant and innovation with the different pummels and handles and swapping stuff out with just the sheer amount of loot and weapon drops. The Edward Scissorhand look of the protagonist and all of the different outfits that can be swapped out with him. It also does brilliantly the whole thing of if you want story, then you can proactively go and get story. It doesn't hide it behind every single item, but if you drill down the dialogue, you get to learn more about the awesome backstory and setup that this game exists in. Pretty sure The Lies of P may be some people's favourite Souls-likes of all time, and it certainly does sit there right smack in the middle of my best Souls-likes on the planet. That is not a bad accolade for a studio's first ever Souls-like release. I know full well I'm on risky ground including this game so high up in a Souls-like list with some of you, but I gotta talk about it. Nioh 2 and The Rise of the Ronin, they have these brilliantly obvious parallels with the combat. Blatantly see, also with Nioh 1, where this idea was spawned, how it was worked on, and for me, I feel optimized in Nioh 2. Rise of the Ronin got a different system, but it could have also been crammed into this list, but I feel it's more of an open world game. I will never forget how quick I was to judge on the initial Nioh release. It came up against other Souls games because it was technically the first AAA attempt at mimicking that From greatness, and it totally managed it to my complete astonishment. I really fell in love with it, and it's just been the same ever since. They haven't really come out with a weak game other than, I feel, Wo Long, but we've already had that chat. That combat model I was talking about earlier, with enemies having stamina matching your own and a rebirth mechanic, it is a little bit more evolved in The Rise of Ronin. With this, as you can see in the bottom right, you have 4 different stance choice, 2 slots for each weapon, both range and melee. You're crazy swamped with hotkeys, putting buffs on, trying to take your health, switching out your bow because it's run out of ammo, all the while checking you're in the correct stance because every single weapon handles differently depending on how you're holding it. Is it as overcooked as Wo Long's? Not by a long stretch. But after playing Ronin, you realise how they've tweaked that up. And I know I keep dropping it, but you've got to check the review out of that game if you're remotely in. KT fans, Amiga Force, Wild Hearts, you guys know what I'm on about. It's all that crazy yokai stuff, right? If you've been playing Path of the Goddess, you'll know my obsession is just unhealthy with a lot of these enemies. The amazing moves, the ninja, samurai, shinobi badassery is all over Nioh 2. I did try and manage a door opening here. I wanted to talk about the inventory or the actual slots or just stuff you can drag around with you in this video game. It is ridiculous, and you can switch everything out Diablo level. You are always getting new loot. Handling of range is kind of impeccable. Also very quick switch and loads of enemy alert statuses. There's quite a lot of creeping up and backstabbery going on within these mini open world maps that the game has to offer. There is no crouch, however, and not too much traversal, and the next game we've got coming up goes contrary to that. Okay, so there's 4 more games. There's an honorary going in just before number 1. And what is there to say about Sekiro that hasn't already been said? And yes, this is the one From Software game I allowed into the list, purely because of how different it is to its traditional model with that aforementioned traversal, and it not having hardly a singular piece of loot in the entire video game or outfit change. There is some variance. It's very stripped down. The controls even more so. That kind of makes it its whole new, rawer animal. It is all about traversal speed and duping enemies, backstabs galore, using the environments, creeping around, even listening to conversations. The game is impeccably designed. Also, you will hear that there's not a single flaw in any of its combat mechanics. It is harsh but fair. It's something that will last you years. I am still trying to finish Sekiro, Twin Apes, help me Lord. I think Bloodborne could have easily made this list, or even sat at number 1 or the top 3. The trouble is, it's like 9 years old, and I did put a solo piece out about it. Went into some areas about the game's performance over on the PlayStation 5 still. We really need to see a remaster, and that brings me over to Sekiro's absolutely amazing 4K and 60 frames per second. Reduced load times. This game flows like nothing else on that PlayStation 5. I think it's pretty much cemented that it's one of the toughest games on this entire list. Getting through Sekiro is a hell of a thing, and the same goes for Elden Ring, Bloodborne, not too much, but most Souls games are pretty damn tough, and this one is no exception, but it is one of the more rewarding and does feature some of the more spectacular Souls boss fights you will ever have the pleasure to witness. There is no way you should be allowed to do this, putting The Surge 2 above Sekiro on a Souls-like list. If it was a Souls game list, Sekiro would be a hell of a lot higher. This is about Souls-likes, innovation, crazy stuff added to the genre to make sure you... The Surge 2, something happened, the planets aligned, as you all well know. Huge fan of it on the channel, it's got amazing DLC, and it just did not get sung enough about being an epic Souls-like. Weapon customization, armor customization, even getting your energy and UI is something that you can alter, a little bit like the Nioh games. I've got a build on here where I get to see what direction the enemy's coming at me when they swing, but that's also taken their health and stamina bar off. It's like a one in, one out system. You are experimenting all the time. Work out your optimum build, and there's thousands. And it also lets you wear what you're killing. You end up looking like the nutters in the map. It's like you almost get a simulator. Monster Hunter is great on making you look like the actual monster you end up killing the most. Every weapon has a set of almost 4 moves with 2 builds on each of the hard or fast buttons, and it incorporates range with a little killer drone that you've got on your shoulder. Notice I'm saying the word killer a lot in this synopsis. The game revolves around severing limbs to then get that armor piece. You can even choose where you want to whack the dude. You might want to go for his leg. The sadism is through the roof. This game is absolutely awesome. They've also put together a particularly good looking cyberpunk dystopian metropolis. The first game pushes quite early, robots and AIs going out of control, but with this one there's almost like a cult system going on with doing crazy human stuff with all the augments and machinery. All the bosses are pretty awesome, massive and next level, just like all games prior. For a Souls-like from 2019 that's coming up to 5 years old, totally holds its own in the market. Quite a lot of story, and that goes for both games, but it's not shoved down your throat with huge, long, crazy cutscenes. Everything's skippable. I'm on my third system with test playing this video game. I had it on a base level PS4, but then we saw some cool pro boosts, and then we just got this awesome PS5 version that runs at 2K and 60 frames per second. The Surge 2 cannot be screamed about enough, a true classic in our midst. It might be something that's old enough to have moved out of your playing window, so you might have this untouched. I would say it's also in the top ends of toughness, purely because it's not very handholdy on questing and where to go and what to do, and you may be in an OP area and not be aware of it. You do have to know where you are and what you're doing at all times. Here is the honorary in the form of Salt and Sanctuary or Salt and Sacrifice. This is Sacrifice, which is the latter of the two games. I reviewed them both in one video. I'll link it, and it made the top 25 local co-op video games of all time list. This and its predecessor are absolutely amazing. Essentially, they're side-scrolling Dark Souls games. The weapons, the buttons, the ailments, the way you take health, your inventory, even going back to a hub. Lighting and finding the bonfires is awesome. They're an unbeatable set of amazing, extremely enjoyable side-scrolling Dark Souls games.
The dough is dead.
Some of you may agree with this choice, some not, but Remnant from the Ashes 2 is my favourite Souls-like of all time currently. Won my Game of the Year for 2023, and I was heavily into Remnant 1. I just think they're both excellent games, sporting some of the greatest aspects of the Souls-like genre, but it includes guns and jumping and rolling and diving around. Some of the builds and outfits you can come up with are absolutely amazing, and this does, as you can see, run like a complete peach on console. PC, not so much. I think one advantage that the Remnant series has is that they're almost like roguelikes, meaning it switches out bosses and tiled levels so much that each playthrough is vastly different. I know that's an obvious one to all of you fans. A lot of people don't realise third, fourth or fifth playthrough even, you'll come across bosses, secret weapons and just people you haven't even seen before, despite putting 150 hours into the game. The story, I feel, is crazy enough to warrant that Souls-like badge, with all that mad root stuff and unbelievably huge and spectacular boss arenas and fights. Again, in with that reroll mechanic, some of them are unique, you may only ever see once or even not at all. That is more than enough reason to replay this game. was, of course, Couch Coop. Won't go into Remnant from the Ashes 2 in massive detail with this video. 38 minutes is long enough to hear this voice. I will link all the standalone reviews to these games, including a Bloodborne theme level within Remnant. It came up on one of the re-rolls. It is totally worth looking at. New videos coming up. There is a shooter that's free on Epic Store at the moment. It sparked a little bit of interest with me. I might dig out some local co-op shooters. I will see you down there.
This is in relation to the controversy surrounding stellar